Have you ever had that feeling deep in your bones that the person you're looking at, the person you love, isn't them anymore? It happened to me last Tuesday. My husband Mark came home from work same time as always. He dropped his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, the same clatter they make every single day. He walked into the kitchen, kissed my cheek, and asked what was for dinner. His voice was the same. The stubble on his chin felt the same. But his eyes were empty. It was like looking into the polished black lenses of a camera. There was nothing behind them. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was tired, stressed from my own job. We ate dinner, the silence stretching between us, thick and heavy like molasses. He didn't complain about my cooking like he usually did when I used too much garlic. He just ate, his movements precise, almost robotic. Later, we were on the couch watching some mindless sitcom. I was curled against his side, trying to feel the familiar warmth, but his body felt cold, unnaturally still. The laugh track on the TV blared and he chuckled. It was the right sound, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was a perfect imitation, a recording played back through a stranger's mouth. I felt a cold dread snake its way up my spine. I whispered his name, Mark. He turned to me, his head moving a fraction too smoothly, and smiled. The smile didn't touch his vacant eyes. "Yes, darling?" he said, his voice a perfect replica of my husband's. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled away, making an excuse about needing to check on the laundry. I fled to the basement, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The scent of bleach and damp concrete was a comfort, a dose of reality. I stayed down there for almost an hour, my mind racing. Who was that upstairs? Where was my real husband? Finally, steeling myself, I went back up. The house was dark. The TV was off. I crept through the living room and toward our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I peered inside, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The thing that looked like Mark was standing by the window, its back to me, staring out into the dark yard. And beside it, reflected in the glass, was my own face, pale and terrified. But I wasn't standing there. I was in the hallway. The reflection smiled. A wide, predatory grin that stretched its face into an unnatural shape. And it raised a hand to wave at me, not at the thing that looked like my husband, but directly at me in the hall. It knew I was there. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just backed away slowly, my legs shaking so badly I almost collapsed. I grabbed my car keys from the bowl by the door, the cold metal a stark contrast to my clammy skin, and I ran. I drove for hours, with no destination in mind. The image of that impossible reflection burned into my memory. I'm staying in a motel 2 states away now. My phone has been buzzing constantly. It's Mark. He's leaving voicemails, each one sounding more and more worried, more and more like the man I married. But I can't answer. Because every time I close my eyes, I see that smile in the window. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the soul, that if I go back, the person opening the door won't be my husband, and the person in the mirror might not be me. The woods that surround my town have always been a source of local legends, stories told around campfires to scare teenagers. They talk about a thing they call the tall man, a creature that walks on legs too long for its body, with arms that hang down to its knees. They say it mimics the sounds of lost hikers to lure you deeper into the trees. I always dismissed it as folklore, a way to explain the unsettling silence that sometimes falls over that ancient forest. That was until I broke down on Old Miller Road, a winding ribbon of asphalt that cuts right through the heart of those woods. My car just died. No sputtering, no warning, just a sudden, complete silence. It was late. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. My phone, of course, had no signal. I was well and truly stranded. I figured my only option was to walk the 5 miles back to the main highway. I grabbed my flashlight, locked the car, and started walking, the crunch of my boots on the gravel shoulder the only sound in the growing dark. The woods were unnervingly quiet. No crickets, no rustling of nocturnal animals, just a heavy, oppressive silence. After about 20 minutes of walking, I heard it. A woman's voice crying for help. It sounded distant, maybe a half-mile off the road, deeper in the woods. "Help me, please, I'm lost!" My first instinct was to call back, to plunge into the woods to find her. But then a story my grandfather once told me surfaced in my mind. "If you ever hear someone calling for help in them woods at night," he'd said, his voice low and serious, You walk faster the other way. Nothing good ever came from answering a voice in the dark." The woman cried out again, her voice laced with panic. "Is anyone there? I think my leg is broken." I was torn. What if it was real? What if someone was genuinely hurt? I took a few tentative steps toward the tree line, shining my flashlight into the inky blackness. The beam cut a weak cone of light, illuminating a wall of impenetrable trees and undergrowth. I saw nothing. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and weak. The crying stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. It was absolute, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I heard a new sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap! 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 It was coming from the direction of the voice. I swept my flashlight beam back and forth, trying to pinpoint the source. And then I saw them, 2 points of light, reflecting back at me from deep within the trees. They were too high off the ground to be a deer or a coyote. They were at a human's eye level. As I watched, the points of light began to move, bobbing up and down slightly as if the creature they belonged to was walking. It was coming towards me. That's when my grandfather's words echoed in my head, and a primal fear took over. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I just ran, my lungs burning, my legs pumping. The tapping sound grew louder, closer, pacing me from within the woods. It was no longer a gentle tap. It was the sharp, hard crack of wood on wood. I could hear branches snapping as something large moved parallel to the road, keeping pace with me effortlessly. I didn't stop running until I saw the blessed glow of headlights on the main highway. I flagged down the first car, a rusty pickup truck driven by a startled old farmer. I must have looked like a madman, wild-eyed and gasping for breath. I didn't tell him what I saw. I just told him my car broke down. He gave me a ride into town and I never went back for the car. Let the woods have it. I know what I heard, and I know what I saw. It wasn't a lost hiker. It was something else, something old and patient, and it was hunting. The tall man is real, and it knows how to call for help. My little sister, Clara, used to have an imaginary friend. We all thought it was cute. She called him Mr. Giggles. She'd have long, one-sided conversations with him in her room, leaving out cookies for him that would mysteriously vanish by morning. My parents just assumed I was eating them as a prank. I wasn't. The weirdness started subtly. Clara would know things she shouldn't. She told my mom that Aunt Carol's cat, which had been missing for a week, was sleeping under the big green slide at the park 2 towns over. My mom, just to humor her, called my aunt. They found the cat's body exactly where Clara said it would be. Another time, she told my dad not to take the freeway to work because the red car is going to be very sleepy. My dad, running late, ignored her. He was stuck in traffic for 2 hours because of a 4-car pileup started by a red sedan whose driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. We started getting unnerved, but it was still just weird. The shift from weird to terrifying happened the night the whispering started. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of soft whispering coming from Clara's room next door. I assumed she was talking in her sleep. But then I heard a second voice. A low, raspy whisper that sounded like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone made my skin crawl. It was cold and ancient. I crept out of bed and pressed my ear to her door. I could hear Clara's small voice. "But that's not a nice game, Mr. Giggles." And then the raspy voice replied, a long, drawn-out hiss of words I couldn't comprehend. I burst into the room, my heart hammering. Clara was sitting up in her bed, her eyes wide. The room was empty. "Who were you talking to?" I demanded. She just stared at me, her lower lip trembling. "Mr. Giggles wants to play hide-and-seek," she whispered. "He wants to hide. Inside Mommy." A chill so profound it felt like ice water flooding my veins washed over me. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, my mom was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she chopped vegetables. Suddenly, she stopped. The knife clattered to the floor. She just stood there, completely still, her back to me. "Mom?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't move for a full minute. Then, she slowly turned around. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide with a terror I had never seen before. But behind the terror, there was something else. A flicker of cold, alien amusement. She smiled. a tight, thin-lipped smile that didn't belong on her face. "Don't you worry, sweetie," she said, her voice a strange, flat monotone. "Mommy's just fine. We're just playing a new game." I backed away, my whole body trembling. It was my mother's face, her voice, her body. But the thing looking out of her eyes was not my mother. It was cold, it was ancient, and it was giggling. We bought the old farmhouse because it was cheap and we were dreamers. We saw past the peeling paint and the sagging porch, imagining a life of peaceful rural bliss. The real estate agent mentioned the property bordered an old, disused quarry, but he said it as if it were a charming feature, a place for scenic walks. He failed to mention what the locals knew. He failed to mention the quarry grinners. The first month was idyllic. We painted, we gardened, we breathed in the clean country air. The first sign that something was wrong was subtle. Our dog, Buster, a fearless golden retriever, started acting strange. He'd stand at the edge of the woods that led to the quarry and let out a low, guttural growl, the fur on his back standing on end. He refused to go any further. Then things started disappearing from the yard. A garden gnome, a wind chime, one of my wife's rubber boots. We blamed raccoons or teenage pranksters. We were wrong. The first time I saw one, I was taking out the trash after dark. The motion sensor light above the garage flickered on, and I caught a flash of movement at the edge of the woods. I froze, peering into the darkness. There, just at the edge of the light's reach, stood a figure. It was short and hunched, no taller than a child, but its limbs were long and spindly, bent at odd angles. It was completely pale, its skin the color of bone, and it had no discernible features except for a mouth. A wide, unnaturally large mouth stretched into a fixed, silent grin filled with rows of small, needle-like teeth. It just stood there, grinning at me. My blood turned to ice. I dropped the trash bag and sprinted back into the house, slamming and locking the door behind me. My wife thought I was crazy, that my city-bred imagination was running wild. But then she saw one too. She was looking out the kitchen window one afternoon and saw one standing by the old oak tree in our backyard, its grotesque grin pointed at our house. After that, we started seeing them more often. Glimpses in the woods, a pale face peering through a window late at night, a small, grinning figure standing in the middle of the dirt road as we drove home. They never made a sound. They just watched and grinned. The final straw came last week. We woke up to find every single drawer and cabinet in our kitchen wide open. Nothing was taken, nothing was broken. They were just open, a silent, mocking display. But that wasn't the worst part. On our kitchen table, arranged in a neat little circle, were all the things that had gone missing from our yard. The garden gnome, the wind chime, the rubber boot. And in the center of the circle was a single, freshly picked black rose. We're packing our bags. We're leaving the farmhouse and our foolish dreams behind. The bank can have it. The quarry grinners can have it. Because last night, as I was packing boxes in the living room, I glanced at the dark television screen, and for a split second, I saw a reflection that wasn't mine. It was a pale, hunched figure standing right behind me, its face split by that same wide, needle-toothed grin. My brother and I bought a set of walkie-talkies when we were kids. We thought it was the coolest thing, being able to talk to each other from different ends of the house. We had a code, Red Rover, come in for Blue Jay, or some other nonsense only we understood. We live in a pretty remote area, surrounded by dense woods. Our closest neighbor is over a mile away. One night, a massive thunderstorm knocked out the power. We were stuck with candles and board games, which was fun for about an hour. Then boredom set in. My brother Leo had an idea. "Let's use the walkies," he said. "You stay here, I'll go hide in the barn. We'll play spy." It seemed like a good way to kill time. I agreed. He grabbed his walkie-talkie and a flashlight and headed out into the storm. The barn is about 100 yards from the house, a dark, looming silhouette against the stormy sky. A few minutes later, my walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Blue Jay, this is Red Rover. I'm in position. Over," Leo's voice said, tinny and distorted by static. "Roger that, Red Rover," I replied, getting into the game. "What's your status? Over." There was a long pause, filled only with the hiss of static and the distant rumble of thunder. Then, the crackle again. "Blue Jay, there's someone else out here. Over." A chill went down my spine. "What do you mean, someone else? Who is it?" "Over." The static was heavier now. His voice, when it came through, was tight with fear. "I don't." "No. I can see a light. In the woods. By the old well. Over." I ran to the back window and peered out into the darkness. I could see the faint, bobbing light of Leo's flashlight in the barn, but beyond it, deeper in the woods, I saw another light, a steady, unblinking yellow light. "Leo, get back to the house. Now. Over," I said, my voice urgent. "I can't," he whispered back. "The light. It's getting closer. It's not a flashlight. Over." Suddenly, his voice was cut off, replaced by a horrible, high-pitched screech that blasted through the walkie-talkie, making me drop it in shock. After the screech, there was only silence. "Leo! Leo, come in! Red Rover, do you copy?" I yelled into the device, my hands shaking. Nothing, just static. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I could find and was about to run out into the storm when the walkie-talkie crackled again. It wasn't Leo's voice this time. It was something else, a perfect imitation of my own voice. "Red Rover, this is Blue Jay," it said, my own words twisted into something mocking and cruel. "It's okay. I'm coming to get you. Over." Then I heard a sound that I will never forget. It was Leo, screaming my name, his voice filled with a terror so absolute it barely sounded human. And underneath his screams, I could hear another sound coming through the walkie-talkie, a wet, tearing noise. The power is still out, the storm is still raging. I'm huddled in the pantry, the kitchen knife clutched in my hand. Every few minutes, the walkie-talkie on the floor crackles to life. And every time I hear my own voice, calling my brother's name, telling him it's safe to come out, telling him the game is over. I'm a long-haul trucker. I've seen a lot of strange things on the empty highways of this country in the dead of night. But nothing compares to what I saw in the high desert of Nevada. I was on a stretch of road so desolate it felt like the surface of the moon. Just miles and miles of scrub brush and darkness, the only light coming from my headlights cutting through the night. It was about 3:30 a.m. I was starting to feel the road hypnosis kick in, that trance-like state you get from staring at the white lines for too long. That's when I saw the little girl standing on the shoulder of the road. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, wearing a simple white nightgown, her bare feet dusty. My heart jumped into my throat. What was a child doing out here in the middle of nowhere? I slowed the rig down, pulling over to the shoulder about 50 feet past her. I kept the engine running, the headlights illuminating her small form in my side mirror. I was about to grab my phone to call 911 when she started walking towards the truck. There was something wrong with the way she moved. It was a jerky, unnatural gait, like a marionette with tangled strings. As she got closer, I could see her face more clearly in the glow of my running lights. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her hair was a dark, tangled mess, but it was her eyes that made me freeze. They were completely, entirely black. No whites, no irises, just 2 pools of polished obsidian that seemed to drink the light. A wave of irrational terror washed over me. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get away, but I was frozen, mesmerized by those terrible eyes. She stopped right next to my driver's side door. She didn't knock. She just stood there, her head tilted to one side, staring up at me. Then she opened her mouth to speak, but the voice that came out was not that of a little girl. It was a low, guttural chorus of voices, dozens of them, all speaking in unison. "It's cold out here," the voices rasped. "Can you let us in? We need to use your phone to call our mother." I couldn't breathe. The air in my cab suddenly felt thick and suffocating. The smell of ozone and something sweet like rotting flowers filled my nostrils. I fumbled for the gear shift, my hands slick with sweat. The girl, the thing, placed a small hand on the door handle. I could hear the faint click as she tried to open it. I slammed the truck into gear and stomped on the accelerator. The rig lurched forward, tires squealing on the asphalt. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't dare. I just drove, my eyes fixed on the road ahead, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. After a few miles, I chanced a glance in the rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. The little girl was gone. I drove for another 100 miles before I pulled into a brightly lit truck stop. I sat in my cab for an hour, shaking, trying to make sense of what I had seen. I know what the stories say. I know you're not supposed to let them in. But what the stories don't tell you is the feeling they leave you with. A deep, gnawing dread. A feeling that you've looked into something ancient and wrong, and that it has looked back into you. I still drive that road. I have to, it's my job. But I never stop in the Nevada desert at night anymore. And sometimes, when I'm alone on those long, empty stretches of road, I can still smell the scent of rotting flowers on the wind. If you've made it this far, you understand that the world is thinner than we think. The shadows have eyes, the silence has a voice, and the faces of those you love might not be their own. What you've heard tonight are not just stories. They are warnings. They are echoes from the dark places, reminders that we are not alone. And not everything that shares this world with us is friendly. So the next time you hear a strange noise outside your window, or feel the unnerving sensation of being watched, don't dismiss it. Listen to that primal instinct, the one that tells you to lock the door, to turn on the light, to run. Because you never know what might be listening back. If you have your own echo from the darkness, a story that needs to be told, share it in the comments below. We need to know we're not alone in this. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next warning. Be safe, and whatever you do, don't answer the door after midnight.